Hi, I'm Rachel Olson, founder of Best Mom Products, where mompreneurs share their adventures in business. Today I'm talking with Julia Jacobsen, the founder of Sunsnapz. Her skin daughter was born. Julia knew she needed something more to protect her baby's skin while on walks or at the beach than what was already available in the marketplace. Julia will share with us how she took an idea and turned it into reality. From manufacturing to social media, learn how this mompreneur manages it all, working full-time with a young daughter, and what she hopes the future holds. Welcome, Julia. It's nice to have you.
Very nice to be here. Thank you.
Great. So, how did you come up with your business idea for Sunsnapz? What year was this? And can you tell us a little bit about how you got started?
Of course. I have a 13-month-old daughter now, and last year I had her in the summer. I live in Wilmington, North Carolina. It's a very sunny place. And I just had a very difficult time to protect her from the sun. And it was very, very dear to my heart to make sure she's protected because skin cancer is very common. I've been personally affected by it. So I wanted to make sure she's protected. And I also wanted to be outside. I'm a young, active mom. So I just started to do a lot of research, and I just couldn't find anything which was practical, easy to use, and affordable. And that's pretty much when the idea Sunsnapz was born. And it took a long time, but a year later, we're here, and it's going very well.
That's great. So, it's funny you say a year later. I feel like businesses take so long to get off the ground. You just officially launched a few months ago.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit, I want to get into the business of how you created your blanket and go through that process with manufacturing and all of that fun stuff. But first, I'm always interested in your background because you're working full time. You're doing sales for a lab equipment manufacturing company. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay,
yes.
So you're traveling a lot and you have this strong sales skill set. How did that play into, how did that benefit you or not benefit you? How did that impact what you do now?
Well, I think in general, I'm a very driven person, and I always had the passion to have eventually my own business at one point. But you need to have a very good idea, and you need the support and a lot of financial resources, etc. And you need to be in a good time in your life, and it just all played together. And I think it helped me, and it's still helping me because I network a lot, I'm out a lot, I see a lot of places. So in general, it has been very beneficial. My background is sales and marketing. I came to the States 7 years ago. I'm originally from Germany, and I married an American, and that's why I ended up here in the United States.
You mentioned you're from Germany, so I want to learn about how you created your first prototype, but also, is this a product that's being manufactured in the US or in Europe, or tell us a little bit about that.
It's manufactured here in the US. This was a very important thing to us. We wanted to have a product which is manufactured locally. Even all of our materials, our SPF fabric is made here in the US. It's tested here in the US. So we know really where our product is coming from. And well, I did a lot of research. I mean, once you come up with the idea, you will be amazed how many days, hours, weeks, months you spend just researching online. And so I learned a lot about the fabric market, and it is these days not very easy to work with a local manufacturer because, as many people know, everything is moving overseas. But that was not an option for us. So we worked harder and we looked harder, and we finally found somebody, and we've been working with them since day one. It's been great. They're local. They're actually based out of North Carolina, and their manufacturing site is in the Northeast. So it's been working very well. And they created our prototype, and they helped us with sourcing materials. And so we've been just working all together, and everybody's here in the U.S.
I think we talked before, so they helped you with your prototype. I think when we talked to you, it said like the initial, which I think a lot of people even forget about because they go through so many iterums of a prototype or a product, that you actually just hired somebody because you said you didn't sew off of Craigslist.
Yes.
So I'm always interested because, as you go through it, it's been a year, so it's like, oh, well, we found this great manufacturer. Tell me a little bit about that, because for the entrepreneur that's listening, who maybe doesn't even know where to begin, and they don't necessarily want to go to a manufacturer because they don't know if their product is really viable yet. Can you talk about, what kind of ad did you write? How did you know what you were looking for?
What I really did was once I had my fabric and I knew what I wanted to do with it, I asked my mother-in-law because she can sew, but she was like, I don't think I can do this, and I'm not comfortable. So I literally went on Craigslist and just looked for people who sew, and I found this very nice lady. It's a little bit of a hobby, but she basically makes very beautiful purses, and she sells them on Etsy and some local shows or at like a farmer's market. And I met up with her, and she actually explained a lot to me when it came to sewing. She's like, you cannot do this because of that. And it was all so new to me. And at the end of the day, we found out that she will not be the best person to work with just because she didn't have the machines we needed. My product has snaps integrated, so she didn't have that capability. And she was very nice, and she put me again in touch with other people she's been working with in the past, and that's kind of like where the ball started rolling and how we ended up with the manufacturer we currently have.
When you went to the manufacturer that you currently have, what did you go with? Like, what was your first meeting or your first phone call like?
Oh, goodness. I called and told him this is what I would like to do. And, I was very skeptical. I wasn't sure if I can tell him what my idea is because we already knew we want to patent it. And I was very vague, and he was like, well, lady, you need to tell me what you want, because if you don't tell me, I cannot tell you if we can do it. So eventually we met up, and it was a very nice meeting. I gave him some drawings. I showed him the material. I had him actually sign a non-disclosure agreement. And he said, yeah, this is what we can do. And he made a prototype, and we made changes, and then went into manufacturing.
Well, okay, so what was your first run? How many units did you have to run?
My first run was about 700 to 800 units.
Okay, and were you happy with the quality? I know that there's always a percentage that's defective, no matter what manufacturer you're working with.
Yes.
What happens? What do you do when do you know that going into it? Are they very upfront about that?
Yes, they were very upfront about it, and they're to the day. I mean, we haven't sold all of them, so we're still going through them, and we find some errors, and they're very open. They look at them, they make changes, and we're just improving our quality. And we're like in our second run now, and our quality is already much better.
Okay, but do they apply a discount or anything towards the future run because of that?
What we agreed on is they either fix the ones which have errors, which are fixable, and the ones which aren't, which are fortunately not a lot, we get a credit for it.
I know that you and your husband are financing this yourselves, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so was the price of everything so far what you had estimated it would be? Did you do an official business plan when you started?
Yes.
Okay.
My husband actually finished his MBA program last year when I was still pregnant with our first daughter. And so that was the task I gave him. I said, you need to figure out how this is all going to work out. And he's on top of it. He's in charge of all the financial aspects of the company. He founded the business, etc. So I'm really more the creative, networking, marketing, sales part of the business.
How does that work? I'm going to ask you on a personal level, as being married, being a new mom, and having a business.
Yes. It's a lot. It's, if you love something and if you're passionate about something, I mean, I never really experienced it as work. I absolutely love product development. I found my business or my passion while I was doing this. I didn't know that I'm going to be so passionate about it. So everything coming to my baby, Sunsnapz, is just, I love it. I really do. I mean, there are hard days. You get frustrated sometimes. You get frustrated with your partner. But, you know, we're all doing this because I have this bigger vision and I have this goal and this dream. And therefore, I'm just doing it. And
Yeah.
every day is exciting, you know. When you start something from ground up, you're so proud of it. And when you hold the first time the full product in your hand, you will never forget it. And I love it. It's very exciting.
Very interesting to me that you say you found your passion while doing this, because
Yeah.
you had an idea and you didn't realize you were going to be so passionate about a certain aspect of it. And I feel like
Yeah.
that's one thing that's amazing about being an entrepreneur. You
Mhm.
have the opportunity to try on so many hats, and it's, you know, for
Yes.
you, you knew right away, okay, the financials, the business, I have somebody I can give that to who's going to be great at it, and I
Yeah.
can focus and try out all of these other things. And I don't think that you ever get that from a traditional, you know, corporate type environment.
No.
Tell me how you use Twitter and Facebook and Pinterest. How do you use them to engage customers?
We had some bloggers writing about us, and then we usually have like a giveaway if they like us on Facebook or they tweet us. So that gave us some exposure. And Twitter was one of the best choices to join because it has been very, very successful so far. I mean, we met over Twitter.
Right, right.
It's just a very, very great, for new businesses, I can highly recommend it. And I was a little bit hesitant of joining because it's almost like another full-time job if you want to really do a good job. But it's been great, the response we're getting. We have repeat customers. They buy one for themselves and they love it so much. They buy one for their friends who is pregnant or a colleague who just had a baby. So it's been very good and positive.
That's great. And so I think you had told me a little bit about who you followed, how you got noticed. And I thought that's a really good tip for people listening who don't know a good way to get recognized on Twitter. Because, right, you just get your Twitter ID and then it's like, well, what do I do now?
Oh, yes. I mean, for me, you know, there are some people that have millions of followers. I did not even know what it all means. And what I really started doing is I followed, number one, my competitors. I followed anybody in the baby industry, bloggers, these mommy bloggers. They have amazing audience. I started following boutiques, baby boutiques. Of course, we're very, very big with in association with the Skin Cancer Association of America. All these groups who are out there who are fighting skin cancer, who want to spread awareness. We started talking to them. So everybody in our field, dermatologists, pediatricians, we started following, and then they started following us back, and we started talking to them and get good response, feedback, ideas. Do you want to work with us? Do you want to do maybe a advertising or whatever it was? So it was very, very positive.
How do you manage dealing with the competition? I feel like for your product, there's a lot of brand awareness. You have to explain how your blanket is different than what's out there.
I have to say that was maybe one of the more challenging part of our product because it is a little bit more than just a blanket. It is a little bit more than just a sun protection blanket. Our blanket can be used in so many different ways, and this is why we also open on our Facebook, or we invited our customers to post pictures how they're using their Sunsnapz, and we're getting the most amazing uses. We had one mom just recently, she brought a little baby gym to the beach, and she snapped it over the baby gym, and she put her newborn underneath. The baby could play, look at the little toys, and she was sure that her baby was protected.
Where do you see this in the future? Do you want big box retailers? What's your big goal for this?
My big goal is to really make sure that parents are educated when it comes to skin cancer in association with sun protection. I want to make sure that Sunsnapz become the must-have baby item. I want to be in every great baby boutique. I want to make sure that I'm at every dermatologist's office. And it's just people know there's a great product out there. It's not just a cute little thing. It is important to do this. We have to do this. Our kids are not going to ask us to protect them. We have to do this. And I want to make sure that I'm doing my part in helping this disease is just not going to get out of control as it already is. And that's going to be my goal. Do I want to be in every big store in the world? Sure, why not? I mean, I think there's no, at this point, the sky's the limit. And I will always do what's best for my family and what's best for myself, of course, and see where it goes.
What are some traits that you feel are most important, and what would you have done differently having gone through the process that you've gone through over the past year?
I don't know if I would have done a lot differently. I mean, you have to make sure that you're willing to work hard and that you're really, really passionate about it. If you're doing it because you want to become rich, I think that's not the right approach. Because you're not going to become rich overnight, and you have to put so much work into it, and some has to give. I mean, you cannot have it all, and sometimes you have to make compromises. But if you really believe in some and you really want this, go for it. I mean, what can you lose? Have a good business plan, set yourself like maybe a money limit. Say, if I'm going to invest this much money, and if I'm going to lose it, that's as far as I go. But just be honest with people. Ask honest questions. Make sure they give you an honest response. If people would have told me this is a stupid product, this is a stupid idea, you have to listen to what's happening and be realistic, and then just go for your dreams. I mean, I'm all for this. I wish that a lot of moms out there, they have great ideas. I mean, I have friends, they're moms, they have amazing ideas, and they just don't have maybe the drive or the time, or maybe not even the will to pursue it, but still they have great ideas. So with that, I have a whole other business idea that eventually I want to help these moms who have a great idea but maybe don't have the financial needs or the time, that I'll take over and do the whole product development part for them and help them bring their dreams onto the shelves and into the stores and into the hands of mothers.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you for coming and sharing your story. Very inspirational. And we'll have a link up so everyone can go to your website. And if you're interested in hearing more interviews like these, they can be found at Best Mom Products, www.bestmomproducts.com, or on YouTube under Best Mom Products 1, or audio podcasts are now available on iTunes under Best Mom Products. So thank you.